So welcome to Nourish Yourself in Nature. And I'm just really deeply touched by this subject and by this program because it seems to be such an important thing for us at this time. And the whole truth, which is that we are nature, that every element of our body, the earth of our body, the water of our guts and our bloodstream, the air of our breath, and the fire of our hearts. We are nature. And this program, we've been talking about how we rebuild our relationship with nature, given that we are nature. And we've talked about how relationships are reciprocal. Mother Earth feeds us, gives us water, gives us air, but are we taking care of our mother? We've talked about that during the program. And we've talked about appreciation, really appreciating the beauty of nature. And we've talked about saying not nature is beautiful or the weather is beautiful or the forest is beautiful, or the scene is beautiful. But we've talked about saying you are beautiful. Making, if I talk about a woman and say she's beautiful, it's objectifying her, isn't it? But if I have the guts to say to someone, you are beautiful, then there's much more of a chance for the person to be touched and for me to be touched. And also, Mother Nature is not just beautiful, she feeds us, she helps us breathe, she calms our souls, she helps us feel connected to life in the universe. So today is the last in this series, and it's about how we take forward our practice as lovers of nature, in our relationship with nature, how we take that forwards as guardians, as sponsors, as being in relationship with nature, how we take that forward in our lives. That's the subject today. And I'm so happy to be working with Natasha, who is so much more of an expert on Mother Nature and wilderness than I am, because she spent time, even though we've both spent, I've spent a lot more time in my body because I'm a lot older than her, in terms of appreciating the biosphere. She spent a lot more time in nature and much more connected to nature in a way that I'm only working on now. So it's great for us to be here today. Before I go into my first piece, Natasha, do you want to say anything as we open?
Oh, just to say that I've really enjoyed these weeks with you, and it's been really lovely to get a sense of settling into each other here. Yeah. And the material that we're exploring. So yeah, I just wanted to share my appreciation with you for that.
It's been great to work with you. And, I'm really looking forward to today. So the subject of today is first, when we look at, it's very easy, I'll talk about myself in a moment, but it's very easy when we look at, what we need to do to take care of the climate and biodiversity on the planet, to become paralyzed because the task is really big. And then we're going to first look at that, and then we're going to think about what can we do without any attachment to outcome? What relationship do we want? How do we make a stand, in relationship with nature, whatever the outcome is? And so that's going to be, a really beautiful topic for us today. And so leading your best life, regardless of the outcome, in relationship to nature. And then finally, we're going to spend time on what are the little things that we can do that are worth making, that will make a difference. And just to tell you about my story, I've been aware of the climate and biodiversity issues for a number of years, but it was only a couple of years ago with Extinction Rebellion that I suddenly thought maybe we can get government and big business to change. And I rather naively thought that if we could get 100,000 people to sit outside Parliament and get arrested, there would be so many people in the police stations and the prisons that the government would have to do something about it. The problem is, of course, that it's quite hard to get 100,000 people to sit outside Parliament and get arrested. And when I looked at what the consequences were for me in terms of travel to my clients and having a criminal record and things, I bottled out of being arrested myself. And even though I think it's so important that we all do something, and that the research says that there could be a mass extinction, there's likely to be a mass extinction, and even in the best case scenarios, only small pockets of civilization will remain, and some parts of the world will just burn up completely. Even though all that's the case, we're much more interested in what parties Boris had at Downing Street. Not that I condone it at all, but or wars between the Russians and the Ukrainians. We're looking at the short term rather than the long term. And I became paralyzed. I was working really hard doing stuff for Extinction Rebellion, running training courses for them. And I sort of thought, well, if we can't solve the problem, maybe I should do nothing. And then, sort of having a sense of guilt, and also a guilt about the consumption that I'm personally involved in. When I throw something in the bin, I look at it now in a different way. I think, God, that's another thing that's going on the tip. And so, but the freeze response isn't very helpful either. In the face of trauma, there's fight, there's flight, and there's freeze. And so my initial response was fight, which was, let's do something about it. And I'm quite good at challenging policemen. So I was quite active on the front lines of some of the demonstrations in Westminster. And then there's flight, which is, let's pretend this isn't happening and let's just make money, or let's just go to the beach. And then there's freeze, which is where I went to, which is, well, if I can't do much about it, I better just not feel it, not pay attention, just get on with my life. And talking to Natasha, I've started to think about, well, I could do little things that I could do. So I'm just coming out of the freeze phase. So how do you feel about, the climate emergency and the loss of biodiversity? And before we do an exercise on that, Natasha, do you want to add or comment on what it is that I've been talking about? What do you want to say?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I think when it comes to facing the reality of what's happening in the environment, it can be really easy to fall into overwhelm, just like Julian's just said, avoidance, and also blaming ourselves for not doing enough or being perfect. So I don't know about you, but I'm far from perfect, and I'm often a hypocrite, and much of the time I fall short from my ideals. But I do have this deep belief that drop by drop, a bucket will fill from water, drop by drop. And I do believe that our actions, no matter how small, have consequences. So these two kind of belief systems keep me going, as it were. They keep me going. And I just wanted to share a little bit more about what Julian was saying. So there was a Buddhist retreat center that I used to be involved in, and they used to offer two types of retreats. And one was for Buddhists to get them off their cushions and active in the world politically. And the other retreats were for people who were activists who really needed to tend to their inner lives so that they weren't falling into burnout and very unhelpful mental states. And it was a really beautiful way of working, I think, this tending to the inner and the outer life. So I just wanted to share a quote that I picked out from a piece of writing I wrote 5 years ago. And actually Mark's already heard it because he was with me last night. But the quote is, how do we live well in spite of the deep paradoxes of our time? The paradox of, say, listening to the exquisite song of a blackbird, coupled with an awareness of the juggernaut of corporate greed and its effect on our planet. Or how do we love deeply whilst knowing that one day our beloveds will be gone? So really, that's a really important question. How do we live with that? Because that is actually what we're living through. We do live with that. It's a truth of our times. I think something that I've really tried to work on in my own self, which I'll say more about later, is how to practice equanimity, but we'll come back to that. It's a kind of lofty state, but I've really tried to kind of find a way into it so that I don't get so blown around by the intensity of what's happening in the world out there. Yeah, that's my offering.
So how is it for you? Where are you at in terms of building giving back to Mother Nature? Mother Nature gives to us. Where are you at in your relationship with Mother Nature? And how do you want to build, how do you feel about your relationship with Mother Nature? Do you want to add anything to those questions, Natasha?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally. I can't think of.
I thought you were asking the group.
I was asking Natasha personally.
So what's my relationship with Mother Nature?
No, I was asking if you want to add anything to this.
Oh, sorry, what's your relationship with Mother Nature? Yeah, I'd be really interested to understand where people are at in terms of being able to stay in relationships, the reality of what's actually happening, because sometimes it's very hard to stay in relationship to that. And maybe what are your strategies for coping with that or avoiding that? And or what might you do that enables you to stay afloat and potent and sort of still enchanted with the world? I'd be really curious for you to explore that.
And so it's going to be 10 minutes in groups of 3, and we're going to let you just have a conversation, but please don't tell anybody else what to think. Every idea, every thought, every contribution is useful. No disagreeing with each other. Everybody can share what it is that they want to share. And it's not, basically everybody's contribution is useful. Even if you disagree with it, listen to it. You've got 10 minutes in groups of 3 starting now. Great to have you all back. So, so the question is, how are you responding to climate change and the loss of biodiversity and taking care of our mother, the earth? What are your thoughts? Go on.
Well, my thoughts are sort of, well, they're more like my feelings, and where they are right now, as I was sharing in our group, was around really trying to feel my body as nature, and to really kind of feel, kind of know that kind of continuum, and it's like, the other thing that came up though was then, of course, as soon as we start talking about it, there's all this fear, and actually fear is probably too small a word for it. It's more like terror. And it's like, actually, how do I form a relationship with that terror? How do I allow that terror to be in me, to be present in me? Because without doing that, I'm never really going to be able to form a relationship with nature. And, it's like, it is about a relationship. And something that someone else in the group brought up, which then really resonated with me, was around how disconnected I am with the name of things. And that if you actually know how to name something, it's like, if you know a person's name, you can relate to them. And if you know some part of nature's name, you can form a relationship with it as well. So it's all these pieces blended together. But that's kind of the summary of, yeah.
Thank you, Caroline. I think it's really important what you say about how to come into relationship to your feelings. It's really important. And you're right. I think that unless we can find a way of coming into relationship with our feelings, then we'll be somehow, there'll be this kind of distance. I have to say, I don't think it's really possible to do that alone. I think that we need to do that with each other and in community.
Mm.
That's the way that I've understood, and not even as a means of transforming it, just as a means of being able to witness and be with one another through such a period of tremendous transition and deep adaptation.
Yeah. Very beautiful. Any comments from anyone else in Caroline's group? If not from someone else in Caroline's group, who else has got anything to say about it to share?
Yeah, well, yes.
Go on,
Yeah, what Natasha said about doing it in community. As you know, Julian, my life calling was to live the sacred, the connection between the sacred and nature. And through community, through creative minds, I've been able to really deepen my connection with nature, and to be able to drop down and connect. So, you know, that really was through community that happened, and through this community as well. And then to go back to what Natasha said about, I think, little drops of water, we can all do something really tiny. And as you know, I live in Stockholm and watch Greta Thunberg sitting there on her own, you know, in the freezing cold, school strike on Fridays for Future. And that has just grown to such a huge international following. And that's an amazing example of, you know, community and little things starting and growing into a huge movement. So I honor that. Thank you.
What else?
I'd be interested to hear from you, Celine. Just because of your connection with Indigenous people.
Yeah. Well, I'm connected with the nature from the early beginning of my life, because I've grown in a little village. But what I was mentioning, that when I started studying in the university and then start to work, I was in the big cities. So, and in the cities, it's like always unplug and unplug with nature. And sometimes it's difficult to be always connected to nature. Even I'm trying to bring nature into my home. I have plants and trying to connect with what is around me. But for me, it's not only a connection or something that is mental. It's also about deep spiritual connection. And it's also about action. And if we are speaking about climate change and you hear the indigenous voices, they say that there is no time to think, it's time to act. And effectively last year we went to Brazil, and we were in the indigenous territory, and we help the people to put some seeds of trees, medicinal trees, fruit trees and other trees to contribute to the reforestation. And definitely it's very important also to be in the action. And we can do, anyone can do something at his level. Even it could be something in your town, in your city. It's also
like what?
It also can be only to bring some seeds of flowers and put it into some gardens, because it will be helpful for the bees. We can all do something very little, but with a high impact.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What else? Everyone's very silent. Perhaps we should move on to the next section. What do you think, Natasha?
Well, I was just wondering about, maybe we just kind of touch ourselves a little bit. I think it's very easy when we're talking about climate in this way to go a little bit frozen, or at least it's easy for me.
Yeah.
And so I just would invite you just to kind of touch down your arms a little bit, like I'm doing, just in a way that feels supportive, and maybe reminds ourselves that we have arms connected to our torso there. Yeah, something like that. And then I might just encourage you just to find your ears, and then just give your ears a little bit of a rub. It's quite good at releasing around the sides of the ears there. And then we might just, with our fingers, just sort of move our fingers from the inside of our eyes, across our eyebrows, and along from the inside to the outside of the eyes here. There you go. Maybe just touching the jaw a little, giving the jaw a little rub. Can be quite nice. Yeah, and then I just invite you to do a little short exercise with me where you put your hands behind your head. You just hold your head so that your face is forwards. And then what I'm going to invite you to do is just to turn your eyes to the left, but not up left, sort of just along directly left, but keeping your face forwards. And so just turn your eyes to the left. And keep your eyes there until a bigger breath arrives, or a sigh, or a yawn. Try and keep your face forwards and just your eyes. Did you feel something? A little breath there coming? And then you come back to the middle. And then you just turn your eyes, not the face, to the right. Maybe looking down a bit to the right. And you just keep your eyes there until a yawn comes. It comes quite quickly for me. There you go. So it's just a real simple way of bringing some regulation into the nervous system. It's called the basic exercise. I can't remember who set it up. And it's just can help us kind of drop a bit out of freeze. Yeah. Yeah. So somebody at the front door.
Yes.
Oh, it literally is. I thought it was Zoom. Okay, so remind me, Julian, what our next part is on.
You're going to talk about leading your best life regardless of outcome.
Yeah, great. So I just wanted to sort of introduce you to someone's work called Joanna Macy. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's probably about 90 years old, and she describes herself as an eco-activist and a Buddhist. And she's very well known for her work, which is called The Work That Reconnects. Yeah, one of her most famous pieces of work, which is Practices, is where she invites people into something called the Council of All Beings. And what you're invited to do is to take on the form of a non-human being and literally dress yourself up as that form. And then you sit in council with each other and speak from the voice of the non-human form. Does that make sense? So somebody might be rock species, and somebody might speak for oak. Somebody might speak for mycelium. It's really beautiful and quite intense work, if you can get to it. So I just wanted to bring her in because she has a lot of wisdom to share. And particularly, she shares quite a lot of wisdom around despair in the face of climate change. And there's this really beautiful quote, which I wanted to share with you, that I wrote down from her. It goes, "With the time that we have left, we could wake up more. We could allow the whole experience of life and the planet, which is both desperately tragic and exquisitely beautiful, to live through us, so that the planet may see itself, so that life may see itself. And it does require being able to experience pain. It does require tears and outrage. It does require positive disintegration. Our whole culture needs positive disintegration. It has to die to itself. So my Christian upbringing, she used to be a Christian, is relevant here. Good Friday and Easter, the necessity for death and rebirth. We are going to die as a culture, and it's better for us to do it consciously so we don't inflict it on everyone else." And then she talks about this last gasp. It's a really curious way of describing something, this last gasp. She says, beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them all. This may be the last gasp of life on earth. And what a great last gasp. She says, if we realize we've fallen in love with each other, if you're really in the moment of experiencing reality, you don't say, oh, I won't experience this because it won't last forever. You've got this moment and it's true now. So we can have a reasoned concern about what is down the track without necessarily getting hooked up on something having to endure. So she's very interested in this idea of how do we really live a beautiful and connected and truthful and real life whilst letting go completely of the outcome, which I find particularly inspiring. And I'm not saying it's easy to do. So I could share more about that if you'd like, about how I try and do that. One way in which I try and do that is through practicing equanimity. And for me, equanimity is how to be completely open to all experience whilst letting go of the result of things. And so some of the work around I am this and I am that, the work that we've done, I think, in Creative Mind, can be really helpful, as well as Jean Gendelin's focusing work. And last night I was sharing about Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Please Call Me By My True Names, in which he structures the poem by having an identity with a victim and an identity with a perpetrator, so both. And he invites us to do the same. And so in that moment, I was identifying with the fact that I really care deeply about plastic and not using it. And yet I did buy, and I do buy, chips from the roadside chip sellers in polystyrene. So, and so in the moment, I was using a focusing technique of what's happening now to try and really drop into my embodied experience of what it's like to hold both my deep care of, say, whales who are dying of hunger because their bellies are so full of plastic, they literally die of hunger, and to find that I also buy plastic now and again, and to really sort of drop into the felt experience of that. So I just wanted to share that because I think that Caroline was saying it's how do we really open to the feelings of what it's like to really be open to the reality of what's happening. both with our own kind of ways of falling short the whole time, but also in the world where there's this like, what the hell is going on? You know, we're in some kind of you know, how can we be living through such times? You know, you talked about, Wendy talked about going and seeing Greta. You know, Fridays for the Future has been going on for years now, and where are we? We're still on our knees with corporate greed, you know. So it's a bit like, how do we really touch into the feeling of that in the bodies, so that we don't kind of become contracted and shut down and depressed? I think it's really important. We need our vitality. We need to be vital and alive and awake in the world, regardless of outcome. I really believe that. And we need each other. I think it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. It's a lie that we can do anything alone, really.
I've been having conversations recently with some psychotherapists who are, you know, who are also very, very strongly spiritual within their particular traditions. And one of the things that they say about, you know, activism like XR is that we can't use the methods that have created the problem to find the solution. And, you know, I think, you know, I don't want to be fundamentalist or extreme about it. But I think, you know, because I think there is a place for activism, and really, you know, there was a wonderful example of one of the XR people who'd, I think she went to one of the banks and broke a window, and they got her on the morning TV. And she said, "Why do you think breaking the window of this bank is a useful contribution to the world?" And she said, "Because it got me on your morning breakfast show." So I think there is a place for activism, but I also really feel quite strongly that the thinking, the cause-effect thinking that has created the problem in the first place. Gregory Bateson said that purposive thinking, logical thinking, linear thinking, he said purposive thinking, combined with advanced technology, gives us the chances of survival of a snowball in hell. You know, so that combination of very linear, directional, self-orientated, self-interested thinking and advanced technology is more than toxic, is catastrophic. And so we just have to be aware that somehow, you know, as a community of people, you know, can we touch each other's hearts in a way that goes beyond that sort of thinking? And that's why I think our inner practice and our inner work is so important, because it is, Steve Gilligan's always quoting Thich Nhat Hanh saying that the next Buddha will be a community. You know, perhaps the next Buddha will be the world community, you know, because, and all we can do is be the best we can be. So if I can be someone who is at peace with the world, that doesn't mean I can also take action and stand up and be counted, but to do the inner work as well as just the outer activism. And that also means walking my talk, which means looking, you know, being humble and looking at my consumption and looking at, I love the fact, Natasha, that you talked about, you know, well, you give up buying plastic bottles of shampoo and get bars of shampoo in bar form. You know, that is a really small thing. I bet you there are some nice bars of shampoo out there. Do I really need it to come wrapped in plastic, for example? We're going to talk more at the end about what it is that we can do. But right now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the whole thing about thinking about nature as the one, you know, as one of the ones we love, our love relationship with nature. And, you know, because if I'm working to be aligned in myself, I'm working to sense myself as an individual, as a part of a community of mind, and as nature, and as existence. If I'm working at all of those levels to sense myself in that way, and and a key part of my sort of reaching out to the world is with love. Let's talk about, love for humanity and all beings, and all the complex ecosystems. I'm reading a book about, how the forest talks, and the forest is not just woods, it's all the creatures of the forest, including the humans who go into the forest. How do we communicate as nature? So I just wanted to throw in this piece about, well, at the very least, if I'm learning to love more, I can learn to love nature more. And I was thinking about the metaphors we can use to love nature more. And Natasha and I were having a giggle because, I could think of nature as my lover. What would I bring to my lover? How would I court my lover? How would I treat, and I could treat treat the tree as my lover, be a faithful lover to a tree or to a lake or to a river or to an ocean or to the atmosphere. Or, at any moment I could treat a flower, a single flower as my lover. And then, I was saying, well, what about if it was our mother? If our mother was old, we start as kids, we take all the milk from our mother and she washes our backsides and she feeds us and she looks after us and she takes care of us. And as she gets older, we have to take care of her. And then, Natasha said, well, please don't mix up the metaphor of lover and mother too much, But, what is it if there's someone that you truly care about, and, through the three marriages, the marriage with yourself, the marriage of love, and the marriage of giving your gift to the world. But the marriage of love includes our mother, the natural world, whose life we depend on. And I like that because it says, oh, how can I be more gracious? How can I be more loving? How can I be more tender? How can I be more appreciative? And, I know someone who does a practice where it's a sort of spiritual practice where they just say in praise of, and then they say in praise of the blue sky, in praise of the woods. And they start to just praise all the beautiful, wonderful, miraculous things about the world, which I think that's a great practice, just to think of, the beauty. And also to combine in that what Natasha was talking to us about last week, not to talk about in praise of nature, but in praise of you, nature, and talking directly to nature. I've started doing that now, talking to trees, talking to the grass. I haven't spoken to the sky, but I'm thinking of it right now, and I'd like to go and have a little chat with the sky later. And it's sort of a symbolic act, but if millions of people were doing this symbolic act, maybe we'd all start treating the world differently. One of the things that, when we were talking about, big corporate organizations and, corporate greed, I think you said, Natasha, but actually so many, if you have a pension fund at Plan, you're invested in that corporate world, and those chief executives increase the profits of their company so that the pension fund will buy their shares. We're all mixed up in it in one way or another. But also to think about, I'm involved with a big investment company that's got something called a green bank. And they're now being really activist in terms of talking to the companies that they invest in and really checking, are you environmentally friendly? Do you check your supply chain? Do you do this? Do you do that? We've got to get everybody on board. And I think one of the ways of getting everybody on board is to have good, loving hearts ourselves. So those are my, sort of thoughts. And so, Natasha, what are the things that we can do? Those little things that we can do that will make a little difference.
I just actually can see Celine's popped her hand up.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good.
Thank you. And I was just, you're mentioning a lot about activism, and for studying anthropology and being in contact with indigenous people, what I'm thinking that we call activism, what for them, it's just a question of surviving. Yeah. Their fight is about how they can maintain their ecosystem, how they can not have any more floods or forest that is burning or whatever, because this is the way of life and connection, and it's very linked to the cosmology. Yeah. When you're uniquine, this is the tribe where I was, and I'm making my work of anthropology on this tribe. You're fully connected to what they call the Yushin, the spirit, but there is spirit anywhere, in the plants, in the animals, in the people, whatever. Everything has a spirit. So if you go into the forest, you can see that you're not alone. And obviously for them, is keeping the culture, is keeping the forest. So it's just a question of not about a tree. It's not about the nature. It's about life.
Yes.
Absolutely. Caroline, unmute.
No, thank you, Celine. Because what I just really felt like I needed to say was, like, when you were talking about that, Julian, about, you know, talking to the sky or talking to the tree, I just felt so strongly inside myself. It's like, I want to talk to myself, the sky, myself, the tree. Yeah. And in a way, that's exactly what Celine is saying. It's like, this is, as I hear it, it's like, it's not nature, it's my life, it's life. Our life, there's no difference. And that's so real for the indigenous cultures, isn't it? But it's myself, the flower, the tree. I just wanted to share that because it just really, I just felt that.
Beautiful, very, really beautiful. I shall try that, Caroline. Yeah. That'd be a great phrase to use. Natasha.
So I'm going to share now some ways in which I've made small acts. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Can you see a page with people on it?
Yeah, your web page.
Great. Okay, so I made this page for our group, and I've called it How to Consume for Nature, which might seem like an antithesis. But actually what I have discovered is that how we buy or choose to buy what we buy, it has a huge impact on corporates, huge impact, because they're interested in what we're buying, basically. And I used to write a monthly article on ethical consumerism. And so I've just put together, and I'll send you, I'll put a little link in, so if you want to have more time to read it, you can have more time. I've put different quotes, links into it. But some of it's around banking, which I'm really into, ethical banking and where they're investing. And the other one is around ways to reduce plastic. So what I wanted to share with you is that last week, microplastics have been found in human blood for the first time, which is quite astonishing. So I've left you a link there to the article, but I was really quite surprised when I saw that. And oh, come on, you can work. So as Julian knows, I switched to shampoo bars 5 years ago because I was thinking, oh, how can I reduce my plastic use in the bathroom? And I put my personal favorite is Friendly, and I think it costs something like £2 a bar or £3. Like, it is not expensive. And I just keep thinking, if everyone was to use shampoo bars, we'd have so much less plastic. Also, I make my own moisturizer by picking rose hips each autumn, putting them in a jar with oil and leaving them on the window in the sun until the oil turns a golden color. And then I use that. It's rich with vitamin C. You can use bamboo toothbrushes. I don't know if you've come across them, but if you use an electric toothbrush, you can now buy zero waste recyclable heads for your electric toothbrushes, which is fantastic.
I'm going to mute everyone.
Was that someone getting really excited about me?
Don't know. I've muted you, Natasha, so you need to unmute yourself. I just muted everyone else. You have to unmute yourself, Natasha.
Got it. Okay, I just thought Okay, and then the other thing is that exfoliation creams, which there are a lot of, they have a lot of microbeads in them. Despite a ban in 2015, actually, the companies have found a way around the rule. So I'd really encourage you not to use exfoliating creams, and organic porridge oats works really well as an alternative facial scrub. So, I mean, there's a lot more I could share about this, but I put in a link to ethicalconsumer.org, which is a really fantastic resource. You have to pay for it, but they basically give you all the details about where to buy what and who from. And then I put in a link to the work of someone called Chris Jordan, who's an artist who made a really beautiful short film around albatrosses. I just popped in a picture around eggshells because, as you know, it's the season of spring, at least where I'm living, and a lot of people use these little plastic tubs, and you can just recycle your eggshells if you're eating eggs and use those instead. Tea bags, tea bags have an enormous amount of plastic in, so it's really fantastic if you can change over to loose leaf tea. And then the other thing is that, I need to correct that, but when we do our laundry, we're shedding, if we're wearing clothing that is not natural, i.e. synthetic, then it has microbeads in it. And when we do our laundry, those microbeads go into the water systems, which is why we're now getting it in our bloodstreams. So there are various ways in which we can help that. A, by buying less synthetic clothing, but B, you can buy these balls, and I put a link to one there called a Cora ball. And what they do is they collect the microfiber with the plastic beads in, so that it doesn't go into the water system. So, I mean, there's tons of information out there. There's loads of it. And even if you're just to do one thing, and like Celine said, I bought myself a packet of seeds that the bees will be really happy for. And I just, even if you don't have a garden, you can just plant it on the side of the road. There's this thing called guerrilla gardening, where you don't have to have a garden to plant things that are helpful for biodiversity. Each day when I do my washing up, I take my washing up and I put it by a pine tree. And the reason why I put it by a pine tree is because the pine trees here are dying by the thousands because there's so much drought here, and they're the first to go because their resin, they don't produce enough resin to fight this little bug that's getting into their trunks. So every day I sort of think, every day probably I have 2 liters of waste water. If I put that on one pine tree every day, it's going to add up for that one pine tree whilst I'm living here. Even if I don't live here for the rest of my life, it's affected that pine tree whilst I'm here. So I really encourage us just to kind of find little ways just to kind of create that kind of connection, really.
Natasha, wildflower seeds, is that what we, if I go and buy some seeds, is that what I go and buy?
Yeah, I mean, also, I hate to be a pedant, but it's really important that we buy organic wildflower seeds. The reason why is if we don't buy organic, then the seeds will have toxic pesticides in the seeds that are being used for non-organic farming, and that is what's killing the bees.
Yeah.
So we need to buy organic wildflower seeds if we really want to help bees and other flying insects that
Natasha, would you post the link from that web page of yours, from your blog, into the chat so that we can all read it?
Yes, I will. Actually, I haven't made it live just yet. So what I'm going to put into the chat is a link to, I can't even see the chat. Hang on a sec. I'll put a link in there, which will, where's the chat? Oh, there it is. This, if you click on there and just send me a message saying, send me the link to that. I also made another web page, which was for you, which is 7 simple ways to regulate your nervous system, which I think is really helpful as a counterweight when we're exploring this territory. So I'm happy to share both of those with this group. I just need to make them private and enable them, and then you can have a look. They're multimedia links.
So when will they be live by?
Demain.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Great.
I will make them live tomorrow, so I can, if you email me there, I'll send you the email tomorrow with the links to the places.
Okay, so are you committing to sending a link to everybody?
Yes, if you send me a contact and I get you in my email.
I will send you the full list.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can send
I'm very
right
happy
to
to do
list.
that.
Yeah. Great. So I will do that. I will send it to you tomorrow, all the contacts from this group. And then
I don't know if it's helpful for people to hear all of that, or if you just kind of go, whoa, it's too much. I don't know what your response is when I share those things. Is it too much? Or do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's inspiring. It's brilliant. And I will commit to doing some of them. Thank you.
No, I'm not going to rap on your door and say, have you done it, Wendy? But
yeah.
It's just good to get a bit of feedback, because
yeah.
I'm
giving you feedback. It's brilliant.
Thank you. I did used to be really like too much on it, and my nearest and dearest would say, "Can you stop talking about plastic and how to reduce plastic?" I was like, "Okay, tone it down."
No, thank you.
Yeah, should we go into groups and just brainstorm again? Just a brainstorming conversations. What can you do to reduce your negative impact and increase your positive impact on nature, on life itself? Groups of 3, just for a conversation, so you're not dividing the time, but just 10 minutes in total. Hey, anything that you heard that inspired you, that sounds like it's fun and something that you'd like to do, or would make your heart warm to do it?
Yeah, I think in our subgroups, compliments, we are all very, very sensitive and aware about these topics, and some cool ideas, from picking up trash from the beach to avoid the fridge, to take green energy, to use green energy, to avoid flights, because it's easy to fly in a cheap way, but it's a mess on carbon which you blow in the air. And yeah, I think our subgroup are, in this point, we are very generous. We are very generative. Yeah. Very aware of this stuff. I was impressed. Yeah.
What else? Let's all do what Natasha said we had us do before, which is, sort of touch yourself, stroke yourself, hold yourself, be aware of it. For me, if it's all just painful and if it's all guilt, then I'm probably not going to do very much. How much do we like to do things from a place of guilt? So just feel your body. In fact, let's do this. Or feel your body first, and then I'll have you do something different. Just rub your neck, feel yourself, what needs to be held. Be kind with yourself, be sweet. And then what I want to do is just if you put your arms out, and if you can just align your arms so that it looks like you've got your arms around the person who's in the camera next to you. So it looks like we're all got our arms on each other's shoulders. So you too, Aris. Yeah, great. And Akim's not there. Just sort of getting a feeling of us holding each other in the circle. Caroline, we're all holding each other. So if you put your arms out so that they're connected to the arms of the person next to you, whatever the right height is, so that you can imagine you've got your arms around the shoulder of the person next to you. And just sort of, just even this online community, small online community, just to feel our contact with each other that from our conversation today, there'll be lots of little actions which you're partly responsible for. Each of us are partly responsible for these little connections. So it's just like feeling the connection with the heart of people.
Can we do the wave?
Yeah, go on. Natasha, take us through the wave. What's the wave? Oh, that.
You know, when you're at the football stadium.
Yeah, but
it doesn't really work on Zoom.
I think
Because no one knows who's next.
You don't know who's next, yeah. So well, let's do it this way. Let's do the wave this way. Everybody put your arms up. Everybody got the hands up? Okay, and then down, and then let's just keep going up and down in time with each other. Whatever. Just so that's what we need, is we need a community of hearts to support each other. A science fiction writer, and whose name I can't remember right now, it'll come to me in about 10 seconds, said, we're here to help each other get through this, whatever this is. So that's sort of my motto. Yeah, to help each other get through this. Anything else that you want to share from your group discussion? I've got a thing. Let's do this. So I'm going to, so everybody do what it, everybody copy what it is that I'm doing. Great. Okay, so now I pass it to Esther. Esther makes some sort of sign and everybody copies Esther. Great, and then you pass it to someone, Esther. You have to unmute to do this.
Natasha.
I pass to Caroline.
I pass to Celine.
I pass to Maritza. Your mic is off.
Unmute, Marija. Unmute. Unmute. Okay, I'll pass it for Marija to someone else. I'll pass it to Iris.
Hi. Hi. Hi.
Hi. Hi. Hi.
Nancy.
You're muted, Nancy.
I pass it to Wendy.
Thank you, Nancy. And I pass to Mark.
I pass to Hakeem.
Let's see, Hakeem.
And I pass to John Enrico.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Who did you pass to, Jen, Rico?
Esther, she was, no? Esther?
With you.
Review.
Has anybody left? I don't know.
RSE hasn't been.
Thank you.
So let's do a guided meditation. I always, when I start, I pay attention to my body and I pay attention to the sounds. I pay attention to what I see and I pay attention to what I smell, but my sense of smell isn't that strong. So just to lead us into this meditation, Natasha's going to read us a poem.
Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So noticing how that poem resonates down through our body, how it touches our heart. Noticing how the breath fills our body. Noticing how our ears hear the world. Sometimes I imagine I'm as far as I can hear. I can listen outside the house. And even if I can't hear anything, even silence is a sound. Listening to house sounds. listening to sounds in this room. Listening to sounds in my body, in your body. Listening to your inner voice from a distance. It's just one of the things you can hear. It's not you, it's one of the things you hear. How amazing. Wow. How did this get here? And then feeling down into my body. I can feel the skin. I can feel pressure on skin, clothes on skin. Air temperature. I can feel my muscles, the big muscles and the little muscles. I can't tell if I can actually feel my bones, but I can feel where my bones touch my muscles. And I can feel where my bones press to my skin. So I have a sense of bones. In my backside, for example, am I feeling my bones? Or am I feeling the pressure of my bones pressing into the chair? All of this biology is the earth. We've eaten food from the earth to make this earth. So great to explore the richness of sensation in your body. What draws your attention in your body? What's a feeling that you haven't noticed, a sensation you haven't noticed? And notice now. And the water of the world that I've drunk is in my eyes. In my blood. In my belly. In my cells. Where can you feel the water directly? And where do you have an indirect sense of it? For example, in the softness of the belly. In the mouth directly. We are the waters of the world. As I listen to my heart beat, I imagine or connect to the blood and the waters of the blood. With each breath, I am the breath. I am the air of the world. As I breathe in, my ribs expand. I feel it in my mouth and my throat, my belly. If you look at a cup, is the air in the cup separate from the air, the rest of the air outside the cup? Just the same, the air in the body is the same as the air outside the body. And in the same way that the air is needed in every cell, I can just at least imagine feeling the air in every cell. Feeling the earth of my body. Feeling the water of my body. Feeling the air of my body. And in England, it's been sunny this last week. I don't know how it's been with you. My skin has felt and absorbed the fire of the sun this week. The sun is in my body. I am the sun. The plants I eat have been made with sunlight and earth and water. It's all in my body. So nourishing. I give thanks for the water I've drunk. I give thanks for the food that's made me. I give thanks for the air that cycles in and out of me. I'm alive. I'm so alive. Just paying attention to our aliveness. Just imagining the rain and the sun and the earth, growing plants, farmed, brought to me, to my table. I'm so nourished by the earth, by the biosphere. Just imagining the evaporation from the oceans, the clouds, the rain, the rivers, the lakes, feeding me with water. I'm so nourished. Just imagining the blueness of the sky that touches my soul, and the weather systems that are always changing, that keep me interested, and the protective layers in the atmosphere that protect my eyes from radiation from space, and the nourishment I feel of the light and the sky and the sun on my body. And in my heart, in my cells, I'm so nourished. I'm nourished by life. Just relaxing in this sense of nourishment. The whole biosphere nourishes itself with the help of the sun. I am nourished. Can you rest right now and just receive this nourishment? From I am nourished, till we are nourished. The biosphere is nourishing. The whole biosphere organized in a way where everything in turn is nourished. We are nature. I am nature. Nature is. Just enjoying that right now. Part of the family of being. We are the family of being. The ecosystem of cells. And when you're ready, staying deeply connected, we are connection. Staying in, we are connection. Come back to the field. It is this group. Notice the field, but it's this group. As the individual self, there are all the selves that make us up as individuals. There's the field of this group. There's the community. There's nature. There's the universe of existence. And just connecting, noticing this field. You want to say a few words in closing, Natasha? I just want to thank everyone for coming on this journey with Natasha and myself. And it's been great working with you. And I like the feeling of support I have here about being nature together.
Just slightly rising up from the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, thank you everybody for being so wholehearted. It's been beautiful to share this space with you and Julian. Thank you.
And when you're ready, unmute if you'd like to, if you have a word or phrase to say, to give, a blessing to give to this field. Or just how you're feeling.
To sustain and to be sustained.
interconnection.
There's gratitude for the vast beauty of our planet and a wish to sustain everything.
We are nature.
Like a sapling.
Use your experiences and wisdom, but be new every day. Live every day a new moment of life, not the past life. Right now. Thank you.
We're also connecting with the word siblings. I'm not used to use these words, but kind of more universal siblings, not only with human, but with something wider, like nature, animals, plants.
Awakening with nature.
It's great to hear from everybody, even just a gurgle before we complete, so that all voices are heard. Abundance. I don't know if I'm right, but I just wonder if Nancy and Aris have spoken.
More and more connection with the nature.
I have a motivation to get closer to the nature.
Has anyone not spoken? I think everyone has. This is the best I can do for a hug. Okay. That you've been here with us. Yeah. Next week we have generative citizens with Judith Lowe, who's a long-time generative practitioner. And it's about us being people who make peace and build good relationships in the world, and the skills that that involves. It's a launch of generative citizens, so do come to that. So Natasha, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to share that someone has just passed me with a car with Céline Dion in the as a music, and
Music, yeah.
it's a song that she's saying that so that you can love me again, and I think that it's like the message of nature.
Can you sing
so
it?
that you can so that you can love me again. Yes, the
Can you-
nature is calling us.
Can you sing a few lines?
If I can sing it. Ouf. Je m'inventerai reine pour que tu me reprennes. Nanana, nanana, pour que tu m'aimes encore. I don't know all the words, so I'm sorry. And she's speaking about pleasure and love in this song, yeah. Systemic field.
Just keep breathing this. It's really powerful. And feel free to go if it's your time to leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.